David Fowlie.
Hello. Hello there.
Looking like you're going to audition for the role of Obi-Wan Kenobi in the next series. I like that the whole beard and coiffed hair. That's looking really dapper there.
I'll gladly be Ewan McGregor's double.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
He'll be CGI stand-in for Alec Guinness, like in the last season of Obi-Wan.
Oh boy. He's more machine than man now, twisted and evil.
That sounded like if Alec Guinness was from the South. Well, there's no other place filled with more scum and villainy, let me tell you.
There you go. Little Walter Brennan.
I could just see Alec Guinness doing a Daniel Craig-style Foghorn Leghorn accent. I want to see that.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
But enough about Knives Out.
Everything froze.
Uh-oh. We're not frozen. We can see you, Mike.
Hello?
Can you see and hear us? Hello? Oh, no.
Oh, now
We've
you're
lost
back.
Mike. All right.
It rolls on Daniel Craig, but I'm going to guess it was something about his character from Knives Out.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, in this context, maybe Saber's out. But, all right,
boy.
So we are here tonight for the 5th installment of What If He Doesn't Survive, the Disney Plus Mandalorian episode recap show. So episode 5 was the Gunslinger, right?
Woohoo!
I did watch the right one. Okay. Now, what did we think of the Gunslinger? Is it worth the 8.0 rating that it has on IMDb? Why are we using IMDb as the measurement of quality? I don't know.
I forgot they even had ratings there.
That's got an 8.0? Really? Oh, jeez. I don't know. It's getting kind of episodic. It's like, okay, we get it. You're a Western. Cool. What are we going to do with this plot? Yes, I love Mos Eisley. That's cool. Where are we going?
Sometimes you don't need plot.
Yeah, just ask George Lucas.
Look, I'm conflicted about this episode, and I'm hoping you guys can help me through it. Because I'm there with you, Mike. I'm like thinking to myself, where is this going? This seems to be another one, kind of like the last episode, where episodic's a great word. He comes into this town, he meets some people, there's a fight, and then he leaves. However, we do have a ton of fan service, ton of callbacks in this episode, which I thought were really cool. Even though, and here's the other side of that conflict, this episode felt like Disney Plus it's almost like they were airing the episodes on regular television and the ratings were down. So they're like, okay, we need to come up with an episode where we remind people of why they love the original Star Wars. So we're just going to throw in all these characters and references.
Mos Eisley Cantina. Give them the corner where, Han shot Greedo. Yeah.
Yeah, it felt that way, but I was also kind of okay with it. What is wrong with me?
It was okay because it was in the context of bounty hunters and Mandalorians and outlaws. And it would make sense that he would just go to a place like Tatooine. I don't know if he would go to that very specific bar, but it works because we're like, well, this is the place they would go to. So that didn't bother me. I think the thing that bothered me was I didn't care about the young hotshot character because right when you think, oh, this is going to go somewhere, when, he finds out about the little Yoda and, he's going to use him as a bargaining chip. I'm like, oh, this would be cool if they go. Nah, they just kind of shoot him and then they move on to the next thing. So, yeah.
You
guys are funny.
It does have that villain of the week quality, and if I could join you in that criticism, it's almost a heavy-hearted one because the bounty hunter, the aspiring bounty hunter that we meet, is that Toro Calican, Jake Cannavale?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we know him from somewhere else? I couldn't place if I'd seen him before.
I think he was just newly written. I don't know.
No, I mean not the character, but the actor.
Not sure about the actor. The character is brand new, but
I was having trouble finding the actor. I'm like, is this Jack whatever his name was? Is this the guy? Like I was looking him up a few minutes ago.
Jake Cavanale did some time on Nurse Jackie, and that's about it.
Did some time.
TV
Was that TV jail?
Yeah, in TV jail.
But it reminded me of the kid from Unforgiven. You know, that whole kind of a thing of like he's the scrappy young kid, wants to make a name for himself, but he doesn't quite know what he's getting into. Yeah. But he's got sort of a little dark side to him, as we find out in a wonderful exchange as he meets up with Fennec Shand, who's played by Ming-Na Wen, who's a super kick-ass bounty hunter, and he's got her marker, and he's foolishly trying to go after her himself. Finds out the Mandalorian's in town, kind of recruits him to say, hey, I need to make my bones on this job. Can you come help me do it? And he does. Things kind of go south for our Toro Calican. Yeah. And what I thought was a really fun reversal, because I thought for sure he was going to let her go and she was going to, blast him, but he just shot her, and for a very good reason.
Yeah.
He's like, well,
she was
I'm not going to bother with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think she way underestimated this kid, who wasn't the brightest bulb in the box, but he had cunning, I think. Yeah. And my criticism of this being sort of a disposable villain of the week is that, once again, like so many of the tertiary characters we've met on this series, I wanted him to stay around.
Yeah. I would develop to a real threat and to a quick learning, dangerous bounty hunter. He could have been like the Anakin Skywalker bounty hunter in a way,
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather have Fennec Shand stay around longer than Toro. I thought that Toro was, definitely resembled the up-and-coming, wannabe gunslinger, in this case, bounty hunter, that we've seen in, so many Westerns, from Blazing Saddles to The Shootist to, like you said, Unforgiven. And I love that, like, it reminded me of that scene in Blazing Saddles when Gene Wilder's talking about, I turned around and it was a 6-year-old. But
he shot me in the ass.
So, yes, right. So, I think it's interesting to see those kind of callbacks or tropes of different genres played out in this, chapter. Obviously, I actually had no problem with this episode. I thought it was fun. It was cool to go back to Tatooine. This is probably the first time we've seen Tatooine post Return of the Jedi. So the crime organizations are all gone. The guild is no longer welcome. There's a lot of hate for stormtroopers because we see their helmets on spikes. Yeah. So we see what's happened to. It's a different type of Tatooine than we've ever seen. It looks a lot cleaner, looks a lot sparse, at least Mos Eisley does. And droids are welcome in the bar, and they're actually bartending. So it's a different type of feel. There's no huts anywhere. Tusken Raiders are still the indigenous, creatures of the planet, and I like
still
how,
able to pop out of absolutely nowhere.
I know.
And surprise
I love
people.
that. I love that. You just know that there's some cosplayers just loving that because, like, man, I always dress like a Tusken Raider to Comic-Con, and now I could finally be used in this chapter. Yeah. So it's you could say, oh, they're using Tatooine again. Oh, whatever. And,
don't make fun of me.
He's doing the internet.
Yeah, well, we'll make fun of both. Equal opportunity. But again, this is a different Tatooine that we've seen before. So it was kind of cool to see. What it would have been interesting to see, like, if a couple of the characters, the antagonists lasted, maybe were left alive, and maybe we came back. Maybe when we came back in another chapter to Tatooine, we would see, like, maybe them pass over, like, the Sarlacc, and the Mandalorian be like, yeah, no, heard about that one, yeah. But yeah, I overall I enjoyed this episode. Like, you're not supposed to like Jake Cannavale's Toro Calican. He's annoying, and he's impetuous, and he does have some cunning, like you said, but he's totally green. This is I don't know. I don't even know how he got that tracking fob, because it looked like, because she's such a elite mercenary, as Mando said. I don't know how he got that tracking fob. Who hired him? Because he's got no resume, and he's got no experience, and he's trying to make his way into being a bounty hunter. So it was very interesting to me.
Well, I wonder if that might be answered in the form of the mysterious figure we see at the very end of the episode, bent over Fennec Shan's body.
Right.
It's not Boba Fett. Everyone I know is thinking of it's Boba Fett. No, it's probably Morano again.
Do people have no imagination? Why do they keep on asking about Boba Fett?
Yeah, what is that?
I don't get it.
Well, the this season, I think, but that's a fan theory of mine. I think he's going to be the big payoff.
I don't
highly doubt it.
He might be, and I feel like the folks who are running Disney Plus or Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, I don't know if they would think of Boba Fett as being a payoff. I think the people who run Disney Star Wars, like the big screen versions, like Kathleen Kennedy and them, they would consider Boba Fett to be a big payoff, because they're like, people love Boba Fett. But the folks who are really in love with the Mandalorian,
kids love it. Yeah,
right. I think I was going to say, the people who love this new incarnation of Star Wars, the Mandalorian, like that it's expanding on the lore and not using it as a crutch. So I feel like if Boba Fett came back, unless it was in some kind of a really crazy, cool, dramatic way, and not just, hey, look, it's Boba Fett again, I think people would be pissed off.
Yeah.
I think the bigger question about that figure, sorry to interrupt, but the bigger question about that figure is, what are his or her intentions? Because, this person could be there to help Mandalorian. This person could be tracking Fennec, what's her name? Fennec Shand. Could be tracking her. Could be tracking the Mandalorian. Could be tracking Baby Yoda. So that's kind of up in the air what the intentions are, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I hope next episode leads to who that character is, and that leads to a bigger plot, because we've done the episodic thing twice now. We gotta. I mean, except the guy directing the next episode was the one who directed the second one, which, I don't know, in hindsight, it doesn't feel as episodic now as I felt originally, although it could have been combined with Chapter 3.
Well, let's do a little sidebar here. This term, episodic, that's what this series is all about. It's episodic.
Right. Well, shows these days are relied more on arcs and telling a story, and I think we're more into arcs these days, and something that has consequentialist plots, if that's even a word.
And I think what to answer both of your questions or points is, yes, it's an 8-episode TV series, but as we saw with episodes 1 through 3, that was a story arc. We kind of mentioned this, talking about the end of episode 3. Like, if that was all the Mandalorian was, it would feel like this really tight, fun little movie throwback to Star Wars. Then you get episodes 4 and 5, which definitely expanded on the story. It's a continuation of the story, because he's still traveling around with Baby Yoda way up. He hadn't gotten to his destination, wherever that might be. But it does feel like he drops into a place, meets a character, there's a shootout of some kind, and then he leaves. Yeah. Now, what I'm wondering is, because there's only 8 more of these left, we're on the dawn of episode 6. I wonder if they're going to plot out sort of an ending arc, like 6, 7, and 8 might be a contained story that leads into next season, which is something I'm really hoping for. I like the idea that they introduced this shadowy figure at the end, because that could really go places. And I feel like episode 5 and episode 4, you could have flipped the order in which they happened, and you wouldn't have lost anything. You can't flip the episodes 1 through 3 or substitute one of the other episodes in and have it make sense. But 4 and 5 are pretty much interchangeable, and I would like to see them go in more of a direction where they feel more like movies and less like cheap TV. And that's a slam. I understand, because David, I really enjoy this series and I'm still into it, but the excitement, as far as like I feel like I'm watching something with a grand vision that sort of transcends television, is starting to wane. And I think a lot of that question will be answered just in whatever they do with episode 6.
Yeah. I just feel that, like, I started watching a little bit of the Clone Wars, and it feels like I want to see where where there's a story there, because it becomes kind of predictable in a way. That there's going to be some threat. The Mandalorian is going to take care of it, and that somebody else is after the child, and who's going to get the child? Tune in next week, and that's fine. And I do agree with Dave a little bit, where it's fine if something's episodic, but I feel like when you had such a huge 3-story arc with this MacGuffin that's the Baby Yoda, we kind of need to see what's going to happen with that, because you can't just walk around with this kid for multiple seasons to push up toy sales. We actually need a story that maybe isn't quite predictable, and we don't know where it's going to go, and that's what kind of made that third episode specifically, and a little bit of the second one, so exciting. We don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we don't know where this story is going to go, and the overall arc is we're learning about this Mandalorian and his past. Maybe not every episode, but we're learning, I think, more about this character each episode. The overall arc is this is a character who's now changing, because he's showing a change of heart because of this Baby Yoda, bounty is now in his life. But it's what is he going to do? What is his thought process here? What is he going to do with Baby Yoda? Obviously, eventually, he's got to do something. But I think that's the overall arc here. Is this character is changing, and yes, maybe each chapter has, I wouldn't say predictable elements, but recognizable elements. Callbacks to either previous Star Wars or movies, or Star Wars canon, let's say, and also other movies, other genres, and that's fine with me. And I've been fine along the ride. And I honestly have to say that it's not like there's been any episode where I've said like, whatever. I'm just really enjoying how they're stretching this out. I think, like Ian said, I think we're going to get to, we have three more episodes left. I think it is going to get into maybe something that is more of a 3-part thread to it, and that's understandable when you have 8 episodes like that. I think you can do that. You could have maybe 1 or 2 that maybe aren't as close to the story that we're overall following, and I think the episode 7 is going to be directed by Deborah Chow, who is so great with the action sequences, and that's going to introduce Giancarlo Esposito's character, who is a Moff. He's Moff Gideon, kind of like Peter Cushing's Grand Moff Tarkin and everything. So he has that title. So there's some connection with the Empire or former Empire there. So I think he's going to be the overall threat, and he was probably the one that maybe the client was reporting to, Werner Herzog's character. So we'll see. But overall, I think it's interesting in this chapter to see kind of we see a little bit about Tatooine work life. We have this Amy Sedaris character, which was pretty funny. Now she did feel very. And this is in a good way. She did feel very sitcom-y, and I didn't mind that at all. Like if this was made in the 80s, like if it was made like around the time of Return of the Jedi, like
was very 80s.
yeah, like if this was made then, like Rhea Perlman would have been playing her.
You're just saying that because of the hair.
Probably. But even the attitude, it was kind of funny. So yeah, she's got pit droids that we first met in Phantom Menace working for her, and I guess she doesn't realize that all you have to do is hit them on the nose and they pop back. Yeah, it was fun to see her and her character, and she had this kind of like Ellen Ripley jumpsuit, and so it's kind of like a Sigourney Weaver look to her as well. And then to see Ming Na, it was kind of cool to we didn't learn too much about her, that she's a threat and has a reputation. We don't know why she's on Tatooine. Maybe she's just trying to maybe she's on the run, So I think each chapter is giving us something different. The last episode had a really strong female supporting cast. This one, kind of again too. And so I think there's some variety, and I think if you look at all of them, each chapter is stretching out the Star Wars universe, which is something that I've always wanted, and it's something that I didn't get in Rogue One, or maybe somewhat in Rogue One and Han Solo, but never to my satisfaction, because those were still keeping within the Skywalker's story.
Yeah. I mean, I like the world building. I like the bits of information that we get about the post-Empire galaxy and the information we're getting about the Mandalorian. But the problem is that we're getting information about these characters past, but that's static. We're not getting a whole lot as far as forward momentum. Like you mentioned that the Mandalorian is changing. From my perspective, his change was indicated at the end of the pilot, when he decides basically not to, or I guess maybe the second episode, where he decides not to give Baby Yoda away to Werner Herzog. We see that, okay, he's a bounty hunter, but this is the one bounty that he can't give over because it's a child. That's great. The rest of the series so far, he's been protecting this kid. We understand that, but that's about as far as we've gotten. We don't have any indication of if he was, mean or a real criminal scumbag or anything. He was just a kind of a casual bounty hunter. So it's not a sweeping, evolving change of heart. I'm wondering if we're going to get more into his character, because right now we're just kind of expanding on his archetype, if that makes any sense.
I think it would be really good to see a character introduced that has a history with this Mandalorian, and who knew him as kind of like maybe a cutthroat, dastardly type character, and now they're like, what has gotten into you? What is up here? That would be interesting just to have somebody who has a history with him. It doesn't necessarily have to be a protagonist or an antagonist or whatever, but it would be interesting to have that.
Yeah, I think we could maybe get a little more into his history without just quick flashbacks and fast references, and then let's speed it up, get to the story. Because we know there is a tragic past with him as a kid, and I literally, moments before I jumped on this podcast, I saw the latest episode of Watchmen, where with that series, they would always dedicate an episode going over a character's backstory. And then we get that's more of an ensemble piece.
Sure.
What the Mandalorian is. But still, it's something where we really want to have an episode where we get to know this man and his motivations, rather than, oh no, he's not actually bad, he wanted out to be a Mandalorian and this, that, and the other. So I see something a little less like a villain of the week plot line, and more along the lines of, and I think you're absolutely right in your point, probably Herzog is working for someone connected to the Empire, because he had those stormtroopers already in his little pad, or what you'd like to call it, and it'll be interesting, I think, in these last 3 episodes to see where it's going. And we know it'll end on some sort of cliffhanger. You can never end a season of a series on a cliffhanger, especially when you're already filming the next season. And you have, I think, The Mandalorian has the highest rating of a TV series thus far for official airing.
Right.
So we'll see what happens. As an individual episode, I totally agree. I think there's some great elements that they introduced. We get to see that Tatooine is a changed place. The just to repeat what you said, the cantina that's being run by droids. There's not as many people around there. The gangster / hut sort of area of it isn't occupied. It makes sense why the Mandalorian would go there in terms of the story rather than fan service, because pretty much the place where all the big bounty hunters are, he can't
Right.
go because of what he did in the planet, which I'm blanking on the name of it in the original episode. So he needs to go somewhere remote in order to, get a job. And even when he's
Right.
going somewhere remote, it's not helping him out. And I think with these 2 episodes, every time he's going somewhere else, it doesn't work out. It doesn't work out. And eventually he has to do something.
Right. Yeah, there's always got to be some hiccups involved.
Yeah. So something, something's gonna happen, and I think just as a Star Wars fan, I get kind of anxious because it's a poisonous fan base, and I've kind of gotten my, had my emotions thrown around the ringer a little bit with each film. So yeah, but it is nice to see something that Dave Filoni directed this one too, so I think he knows it's going to go somewhere. So,
yeah. I mean, I had recently just finished Star Wars Rebels, and I had already watched Star Wars Clone Wars, and Filoni does a phenomenal job at filling in spots in the universe and bringing new characters, yet still expanding ideas and themes and the Force. And so I highly recommend both those shows. So maybe when Mandalorian is done, you guys can catch up on Clone Wars and Rebels. Dave Filoni is the perfect guy to, I know he's kind of show running this with Favreau, so I think it's in good hands.
Yeah, they can kind of have each other's back and forth a bit. You have two voices helping each other out.
Yeah, I mean, I think this episode was a nice rebound for me, because I think I started off the last conversation with, is the honeymoon over? I'm still digging this show, but yeah, I think again for me, episode 6 is going to be more of a benchmark. I mean, we'll have a better understanding of what this series is at the end of episode 8, granted, but yeah, I'm still on board, still rooting for our masked man. But with that, I think we'll cut it short unless anyone has any final thoughts.
I have to say that I was whelmed when I recalled this past Friday, that there's going to be a new episode of The Mandalorian. Because what happens is throughout the week, and your brain's occupied with a lot of things, and your brain's kind of burnt out because it's towards the end of the week. But I do love how they're spreading this out instead of the ability to binge it all, because it does remind me that, like, hey, there's something to look forward to on Friday, and it's kind of nice.
Yeah, it's very nice. It's nice to not OD on Star Wars, that's constantly being shoved at you. Because Disney, I try to watch like all the Clone Wars, and I just stop eventually because there's just too many lasers and
there's a lot. Yeah. But I hope they keep up with this model, because I think it really it kind of harkens back to to talk about episodic, the draw and the way to build up momentum, and the way to you have water cooler conversations. The way to build up a show is to give it a chance to breathe. And when somebody's binging it for 6 hours or something, like the opening week, the weekend it drops, just so nothing will be spoiled for them. It's just, you're in this bubble, and then you open up the internet, and there's all this positive and negative talk with a bunch of spoilers, and it's just kind of like overwhelming, and then you're on to the next thing, and you don't give it a chance to breathe.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, especially I'm conflicted about this too, because I love the idea of all of it being available. So if you want to watch it, you can. But the other problem is there's so much content saturation across all the different providers on these platforms, that you have a show that comes out, and it's forgotten a week later. That conversation happens.
Right.
If an episode, if a series drops on Friday at midnight, half the internet has stayed up to watch all 6 or 13 episodes so they can get their video or their blog out about it. And that conversation is done by the middle of the next week, unless there's something crazy explosive happening on it, which is never the case because there's always 15 more new series debuting the weekend after. So yeah, Star Wars doing The Mandalorian in this way, I think it gets people something to look forward to, as you said. Also, from a cynical marketing perspective, it's a perfect build-up to Star Wars because once this ends, you're going to go right into Episode 9, right?
Speaking of that, I did hear that, I think it's, what episode is it? Episode 7 will have some kind of a Rise of Skywalker preview, which is kind of funny to me because it's like, all right, by now, if you haven't gotten your tickets, I mean, it's going to debut. I think it's December 18th.
The premiere, I think, is the Hollywood premiere. I think is the 16th, and it comes out on the 20th.
Okay, so now, that episode is going to drop on Wednesday the 18th.
Okay.
So they're gonna. So that's the next day. The movie, the Rise of Skywalker, is out.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Oh boy. It's a series, and that's just right. So they still have 2 more episodes to control the bleeding in case Rise of Skywalker goes horribly bad.
Yeah. Well, it could happen because it's getting released on Friday the 13th, so you never know.
Oh God. Oh God.
They should have a big, huge stormtrooper with a machete.
Yeah, right now, ooh. Like Yoda's predicting all of this. Like, wow, in a bad direction this is going.
You gotta have hope.
I think we
will be your name instead of JJ.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I think Yoda's resting on the residuals, so he's fine.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's we'll leave it there, and maybe next week we can talk about the wonderful memes about the knockoff Baby Yoda merchandise that's popped up everywhere.
Oh boy!
There's merchandise. Are we getting the holiday catalog from '77 again?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, my gosh.
I would love that. All right. Well, thank you guys, and again, just for the viewers, if you've enjoyed this conversation. Please let us know in the comments. If you hated this conversation, please let us know in the comments. We are very sensitive individuals, so please go easy on us. Also, remember to like and subscribe and click the bell for notifications, and join us back here on Monday for more What If He Doesn't Survive, episode 6. Any idea, have they named it what it's going to be yet?
Not yet, no. And they are called chapters. I know we're calling them episodes, but they are called chapters.
Yeah, I know. My nose is up in the air. I'm highfalutin too. But
Well, speaking of which, I'll take the high ground. So
there it is.
Good night, gentlemen.